I still remember when I realized my parents chose a wedding over my life. It was a freezing Tuesday in March. The doctor in Billings showed me the scan, a tumor the size of clenched fist. He told me I needed surgery right away. No waiting. And the twist? My family had the money, not in my own bank account, but in a shared emergency fund they'd been growing for years. I even contributed to it once when my dad lost his job. I thought that fund was for exactly this kind of crisis. So I asked for help. Not begged, just asked. Told them what was going on. Gave them the hospital estimate. My mom barely looked up from my sister Ashley's wedding planner. She said something about how the reception deposit was non-refundable. And just like that, the wedding won. My life lost. I've been in construction since I was 17. By the time I turned 40, I was running my own crew. No college, just hard work. Built things that lasted. Ashley, she was the graceful one. A dreamer. The kind of person who never has to carry heavy things or worry about bills. Her fiancé was a software guy from Bozeman, soft-spoken, fleece-wearing, the kind who looks at people like me and sees help. I don't hate her, but I was the one who showed up when my dad's car died in the snow, who paid the propane bill quietly one winter. When it was my turn to need help, I became a burden. But my crew didn't see me that way. Kenny, my foreman, dropped off an envelope with over $3,000 in it. Just said, let us know if you need more. And I did. I needed more. But with them, I made it. I got the surgery. I survived. Took months to recover. Nearly lost my home. Kenny even covered 2 mortgage payments. I came back, stronger, promoted to project manager. I sent Kenny a bottle of whiskey and a handwritten note. He said it made him cry. I didn't attend the wedding. I mailed a card. No gift. No explanation. Just silence. Years later, my parents came knocking. Dad's heart. Mom's hip. They were scared. I didn't yell. Just gave them a number for Medicaid assistance and closed the door. Because my family? It's not them. It's Kenny. It's the crew. It's the men who passed a hat at the bar when my truck broke down in Havre. And I still keep that scan, the tumor that showed me everything I needed to know. The hardest part wasn't the tumor. Not the surgery. Not even those long nights alone, staring at the ceiling in a cold rented room, wondering how many more days I could go before everything gave out. No, the hardest part was the thank you card Ashley sent. Not for helping. She didn't thank me for that. It was a generic wedding thank you card, printed, perfumed, clearly from a bulk box. It said something like, we're so glad you could be there. Except I wasn't. She didn't even notice. And that's what gutted me. Not just being left out, but realizing I was never on the list to begin with. After my surgery, I started writing things down. Not a diary, just a plain, spiral-bound notebook where I log who showed up and when. Every ride to the clinic. Every meal left at my door. Every small act of grace that kept me afloat. Kenny's name was in there a dozen times. Raul bought me groceries for a week. Tammy, the woman at the billing desk, quietly reclassified one of my charges and saved me $600. I put her name in too. My parents? Not once. Not even a phone call during recovery. When I was younger, I thought family was like gravity, an invisible pull that brought you home no matter how far you drifted. I was wrong. Gravity only works if something's still holding you. A few weeks after their visit, Dad left me a voicemail. He sounded lost. Said he missed me. Said he didn't understand why I was being so distant. No mention of the wedding fund. No apology. Just confusion, like I was the one who'd broken something sacred. That night, I sat outside, beer in hand, flipping through the notebook like a scripture I had written myself. I reread the names, replayed the moments. Ashley's name wasn't there either. I'll admit something ugly now. I started keeping score. Not just of who helped, but of who didn't. Comments people made. Things I didn't do. Smiles that cut deeper than silence. I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew it would rot me from the inside. But I did it anyway. On the last page of that notebook, I wrote something in all caps. Don't forget who wasn't there. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't some noble automatic response. It's credit. You extend it. You offer it. But if people keep missing their payments, you stop lending. There's something people don't tell you about surviving. They think it makes you stronger. That walking through hell turns you into steel. But really, all it does is burn off the illusions. You come out raw, not reinforced. About a month after I returned to work, just light duty, overseeing job sites, I bumped into Sean, an old high school buddy, at the Home Depot off King Avenue. We hadn't seen each other in years. His eyes went wide when he saw me. He said he'd heard I nearly died. Something about surgery, something serious. Then he asked, why didn't anyone tell me? I told him it wasn't a big deal. But the real answer? I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to give them a chance to disappoint me. I didn't want to hear their excuses. Didn't want the half-hearted check-ins or the pity texts that evaporate after a week. People love the drama of a crisis. Funerals, emergencies, ambulances. But recovery? Recovery is quiet. And people vanish in the quiet. The ones who showed up? Kenny, Raul, my landlord, surprisingly, knocked 2 months off my rent and left homemade soup on my porch. The ones who didn't? My sister. My parents never asked how the recovery was going. No calls. No cards. Not even a "you hanging in there." But here's the twist. I don't think they ever told Ashley what happened. Or maybe they did and she just didn't care. Either way, the silence was deafening. 6 months later, I ran into her at a grocery store. She looked up, startled, said I looked thinner, healthier even. I looked her straight in the face and said, I had cancer. She stared, laughed nervously, like maybe I was joking. But I wasn't. She stood there with a box of quinoa in her hands, speechless. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. They'd never told her. My own parents never told my sister I was in the hospital fighting for my life. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe it was just easier to pretend I was fine. That way, they didn't have to face what they chose instead. A wedding, a party, a flower arrangement. I walked past her without another word. If she had asked me why I was still alive, she didn't deserve to know. After running into Ashley, I didn't sleep for nearly 3 days. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pain. It was that other kind of insomnia, the one that creeps in when you're no longer sure what to do, with the pieces still rattling around inside you. I sat on my porch with a chipped coffee mug, the one my mom had tried to throw out a decade ago. I made her keep it. Back then, I thought it was just stubbornness. Now I know it was more than that. I didn't want to be replaced, not even in the smallest ways. That night, I went into the garage and found an old belt. Worn leather, fraying at the holes. My dad had given it to me on my 21st birthday. He told me, a man needs something that holds him together when the world falls apart. Ideologa. I'm not laughing anymore. I held that belt in both hands and thought, this is it. This is all I've got left from him. Not words of encouragement. Not a hospital visit. Just a piece of leather, handed off years ago, like it was all the support I'd ever need. Later that evening, I got a letter. A real one. Envelope, stamped their return address. Inside was a card. Gold letters across the front. Hope you're feeling better. Inside it read, sorry things got so complicated. You've always been the strong one. We knew you'd pull through. That wasn't an apology. That was a summary. Like my pain was a given. Like survival was just part of who I was. So they didn't have to worry about showing up for it. I didn't write back. I slipped the card into the back of my notebook, the same one with the list of names. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. For the days I start to doubt. A way to remember that being the strong one doesn't mean you should be invisible. And the belt? I still wear it. But now it's not a symbol of connection. It's a warning. Sometimes the things that hold you together aren't the things that ever saved you. The next time I saw my parents in person, it wasn't out of love. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even regret. They came because they needed something. I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, finishing up a site inspection for a school remodel project. First one I'd led start to finish since the surgery. Concrete, HVAC, handrails, everything was in place. I'd even picked out the steel rails myself, knew how brutal winters here can be. I was proud of the job, quietly proud, the way you are when you build something solid that won't fall apart. That's when I saw their SUV. Silver. Same license plate. Same dent on the bumper Dad never fixed. They pulled up to the chain link fence like it was normal. Like I was just going to walk over and say hi. I didn't. I sat there and let them come to me. Mom looked smaller, not physically, just faded. Dad had that tired look he used to wear when the money ran out before the month did. But they didn't come for a hug. They came for help. Said they were behind on property taxes. Ashley couldn't pitch in. Baby on the way. New house in Helena. The whole script. They didn't ask me outright. They didn't have to. I was the backup plan. I always had been. The steady one. The one who showed up. The one who paid. What they didn't know was that I'd already seen the tax records online. Already knew about the pawn shop the ring Mom had sold. I wasn't mad about the money. I was mad they pretended nothing had happened. That was the part that cracked something in me, the performance. The way they stood there like we just talked last weekend. Like I hadn't gone through hell alone while they played house with Ashley's wedding photographer. I didn't yell. I didn't bring up the tumor. I just asked if they remembered what the surgeon told me that first day. They looked confused. Like they honestly didn't know. I told them that's the difference between us. I remember everything. Then I got in my truck and drove away while they stood there, suddenly small again, and for the first time in years, completely silent. A week after I drove away from them at the site, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting instantly, that rounded, careful cursive she used for Christmas cards and thank you notes. The kind of handwriting you can only fake sincerity with once. Inside was a check. $3,000. Memo line said, "For everything. No noche. No explanación. No apology." Just a number. I sat there on my porch, holding it like it was radioactive. Part of me wanted to laugh. Not because the amount was insulting, though it was, but because they thought that was all it would take. Like pain had a price tag. Like betrayal could be reimbursed with a number that fit neatly into a banking app. I didn't cash it. I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a hammer, a gift from the guys when I got promoted to project manager. It's still there. That check became something else. A reminder, not of what they owed me, but of what they'd never understand. Because the cost wasn't the money. It was the silence in the hospital room. The way no one held my hand when I signed the release forms. The echo of my own voice when I asked the nurse if I could call someone and then realized I didn't know who. That $3,000 wasn't for everything. It wasn't even for anything. It was hush money disguised as closure. But I wasn't interested in closure. I was interested in memory, in keeping the ledger accurate. Honest. Kenny stopped by that week, dropped off a six-pack and sat with me on the porch. Said nothing about the check, though I knew he saw it. Instead, he asked about the school project, the railings, the paint delays. Work stuff. Normal stuff. And that's when it hit me. Some people try to erase what they did with money. Others make up for it by just showing up. The ones who show up, they're the ones I keep. It happened just after the first frost. Early October. That time of year when the air thins out and every word feels like it might shatter. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. No voicemail. 10 minutes later, it rang again. I picked up. It was Ashley. Her voice cracked when she said my name. I could hear a baby crying in the background, faint, rhythmic, like a reminder of how much time had passed. She told me everything had come out. The surgery, the check, the silence. Apparently, Mom had broken down during a visit, started crying over a cup of tea while Ashley held the baby. Spilled the whole story, how they chose the wedding, how they left me alone, how they never told her. Ashley said she felt sick about it. Not just what happened, but about the version of herself that didn't even know her own brother had nearly died. She said she wanted to make it right. I believed her. I just didn't care. That's what stuck with me most, the numbness. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was somewhere colder, somewhere past it, like a road you can't back down, even if you want to. I told her I was fine, that life moved on, that there was nothing to worry about. None of it was true, but I said it anyway. Not for her sake, for mine. Because if I opened the door to everything I'd felt, I wasn't sure I could close it again. She asked if we could talk again soon. I said sure. We haven't. That year, Thanksgiving came and went, and I didn't hear a word from anyone in my family. Not even one of those mass text messages with a turkey emoji and a half-hearted grateful for you all. Nothing. I spent the day working. Not because I had to, the crew had the day off, but because I didn't want to sit still. I showed up at the storage facility we were remodeling on the west side of town and started painting trim by myself, heater running full blast in the corner, country radio barely coming through the static. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud in a different way. Every brushstroke reminded me of the holidays we used to have. Mashed potatoes from a box, football on mute, Ashley pretending she liked pumpkin pie. I used to think those dinners were sad, but now I missed even that. At some point, I sat down on an overturned bucket, gloves still on, and just let myself feel the weight of it all. The distance, the finality, the fact that nobody came. Not because they were busy, because they didn't want to. I think that was the first time I said it out loud. They left me. And the moment I said it, it became real in a way it hadn't been before. I'd spent so long justifying them, telling myself they didn't know, or they were overwhelmed, or it had been a mistake. But sitting in that cold building, paint drying around me, I knew the truth. They knew. They chose anyway. And I lived through it. I found a gift in the back of my closet, behind a pair of boots I hadn't worn since before the diagnosis. It was a watch, simple, silver, not expensive. I'd bought it for Dad the year everything fell apart. Planned to give it to him for Christmas. It had a little engraving on the back, for the time we still have. I'd forgotten all about it. Funny how memory works. You think you've let go of something, but it just finds a darker corner to sleep in. I sat on the edge of my bed with the box in my hands, wondering who I thought I was when I bought it. Back then, I still believed in repairing things. I still thought time could fix people. Now, I believe time just shows you who they are. I never wrapped the watch, never gave it, just tucked it away and pretended it didn't matter. But holding it now, years later, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel regret. I just felt quiet, like I'd outgrown the need for certain kinds of closure. Like I didn't need to win. I just needed to live without them. I thought about selling it. Then I thought about throwing it off the rimrocks just to watch it disappear into the city below. But in the end, I put it back in a box, closed the lid, placed it in a drawer. Some things don't need to be burned or buried. Some things just need to be left behind. A few days before Christmas, I got a card from Raul and his wife. Inside was a photo of their kids bundled up in scarves, standing in front of the big Christmas tree downtown. Smiling, goofy real. Tucked inside the card was a handwritten note, just a few lines, but it said more than anything my parents had written me in years. They said they missed seeing me, that the crew was planning a little get-together, that they still thought about how close we came to losing you. That last line sat with me, because for all the silence, all the abandonment, all the little deaths I'd endured quietly, there were still people who remembered. And not just remembered, but cared. The thing is, I used to think family was just the people you're born to. Blood, DNA, obligation. Now, I think it's the people who show up when they don't have to. Who knock anyway, even when the door's been closed a long time. It's Kenny bringing soup when I couldn't stand. Raul keeping my job open. Tammy at billing, marking urgent like it meant something. It's the guys showing up on the weekends just to check in. It's six-packs on porches. Hugs with no speeches. That's family. Not people who remember your birthday out of guilt. Not people who mail checks with no return address. The people who make space for you when you're broken, even if you don't ask. That's who stays. I stopped calling my parents after the check. I stopped blaming them, too. Not because I forgave them, because I outgrew the need. I keep the notebook in my top drawer. Still add names from time to time. Not as often, but sometimes. There's one page at the very end. No lines. Just 4 words in my handwriting. Don't confuse survival with love. I wrote it after a long night when I almost called Mom. The number was still on my phone. My thumb hovered over it for what felt like an hour. But I didn't press it. I didn't need to, because the truth is, I made it through. Not because they helped, but because others did. And because I finally learned that surviving without bitterness is its own kind of miracle. I see my parents in town sometimes. Grocery store, post office, across the gas station pumps. We nod. That's it. They still live in that same house. The one I helped patch after a storm tore the roof off in '09. My hammer is probably still in their garage. And you know what? They'll always be my family. Technically. But the people who carried me through, the ones who didn't turn away when things got hard, they're the ones I call mine.